Perfect Galvanize, the ultimate in support, or is it more just a nice thing to have? So, after collecting a grand total of 37 named backpacks with Perfect Galvanize, I've been running around and doing a lot of testing. No, I still don't have my crit chance crit damage one, but I have a crit chance headshot, which is doing okay for now. I also have a skill haste status effect, skill haste skill damage status effect, headshot handling, and a few others which I am slowly working my way through, trying to come up with some weird and wacky builds utilizing the backpack. Now, with the backpack itself, there are always better options depending on what you're wanting to do, simply just because of how Galvanize works. It will give you 30% for normal, 50% for perfect, bonus armor to both you and your allies when you apply a certain status effect. These status effects include blind, ensnare, disorient, and shock. The annoying thing with Perfect Galvanize, or just Galvanize in general, is that it doesn't stack. It does not stack with itself, so having two people run Galvanize in a group is null and void. Also, it does not stack with Perfect to normal either, so you can't magically get 80% bonus armor out of nowhere by having two people run it, one running Perfect and one running normal. They also do not cancel each other out, which is kind of a good thing but also kind of a bad thing. If a player procs normal Galvanize before another player can proc Perfect Galvanize, you're not going to get Perfect Galvanize. You have to wait for normal to run out and then reproc perfect. It becomes a little bit of a ball ache, but it does also mean that Galvanizes aren't stacking or cancelling each other out for any particular reason, because I'm pretty sure we'd all prefer perfect rather than someone cancelling out perfect to give us normal. Now, there are some huge synergies that can be made with this backpack, simply just because Scorpio is a thing which does disorient on its third shot, also does shock on its third shot. And then there's Hunter's Fury, which, killing something, will disorient nearby enemies, allowing Galvanize to also proc, which is very handy considering that Galvanize, like I said, doesn't stack. It is also on a timer. It will last for 10 seconds. This isn't necessarily a cooldown, because cooldowns can be interacted with. This is flat out, you proc or activate Galvanize, you now have to wait 10 seconds to reapply. Having multiple sources to do this allows for a greater uptime on Galvanize, so running things like Hunter's Fury with Scorpio is going to be a very good option. Now, the huge benefit to Galvanize over other talents that provide you and your team with bonus armor is, one, it is the largest source of bonus armor in the game. It's 50%. 2, it fully allows you, where you can run Scorpio and Hunter's Fury and get some decent uptime with it, it fully allows you to go for a solid DPS shotgun build and still support your team. There are going to be better options, Protector, Vanguard, etc, but when it comes to being able to do a lot of these more tanky side talents, they are directly beneficial to you actually playing as a tank. With Vanguard kind of being the only exception to this, simply just because even Perfect Vanguard will still give you 50% of your armor to allies for 20 seconds. It has a 25-second cooldown. The issue is, we don't really have any decent backpack talents that synergize with this well for allowing you to do damage, so you kind of end up having to go more towards a tanky style. Of course, you can go vigilance, opportunistic, whatever it is you wish or whatever your heart desires. However, with utilizing a backpack that allows us to get bonus armor, we have that wonderful option of Intimidate. Granted, Intimidate is not going to work as flawlessly as it would with Adrenaline Rush or Bloodsucker in this department, but it does still work, it does synergize well, and the overall performance you're able to get utilizing something like Intimidate with Galvanize, providing you and your team with bonus armor as well as you getting extra damage from it, does actively work. The footage you are seeing right now is me running Galvanize with Intimidate. I have literally no issues getting or maintaining the Intimidate buff. Sure, Galvanize is going to reset the Intimidate buff, but it's not so much of an issue of where it becomes completely redundant, and it does allow me to get some hefty damage out of it. There are also weird and wacky ways, if you are quick enough, to maintain the Intimidate buff permanently. Though this is very difficult, and it simply is just the simple fact of Galvanize will run out, your game then needs to take a second to process this, and a second later Intimidate will wear off. It literally takes just under a second. So if you time some of your skills or what you're doing and attacking in a very optimal, near godlike manner, you can maintain Intimidate nigh on endlessly. I also did some experimenting just running Hunter's Fury, so what you can see here is Hunter's Fury with a Super 90. Galvanize is only being activated through Hunter's Fury's Disorient, which does make it a lot more sporadic, but it does also mean that we can run things like a Super 90 or an MH70 with Pummel, as I did find that running this as a DPS build, although it was viable, it did work. The reloads on a shotgun are horrible, and I mostly absolutely hated it, so I opted for something along the lines of Pummel, just to keep my ammo economy in check, as well as my reloads. This did allow for some pretty epic plays, and it did do a lot of damage, though the issue was it was more sporadic. The best part about it was just the simple fact of being able to run a shotgun and not reload. So the build I'm running, as you see in the background footage now, is a Super 90 with Pummel, mod attachment shown, 4-piece Hunter's Fury, the named electric backpack. Annoyingly, mine does have headshot damage, which I would prefer to change to critical hit chance, the Golan chest for perfect Intimidate, and then obviously 4-piece Hunter's Fury, like I said, all rolled to critical hit damage. This gives me 50% crit chance, 105 critical hit damage, which should go up, and the overall performance wasn't actually that bad. It does do some pretty decent damage. The only issue was just being able to reliably proc perfect Galvanize for both you and your team. Obviously you're going to do maximum damage when you have Intimidate up. The overall performance though was just fine, it worked, it was entertaining, and the bonus armor did come in clutch a few times, saving both myself as well as Octa, who was helping me out with this video, simply just because it is or intended to be a team support or orientated build. The other build I was running is basically the exact same, apart from I put Scorpio on, and I did change the specialization. In the previous build it was Firewall. For this one I swapped to Technician for the +1 skill tier. The reason I did this is 1, a skill 1 shield is slightly more survivable, 2, it allowed me to get an extra foam because the other skill I was running was the foam chem launcher, and having that just at skill 1 did mean that if I needed to, rather than relying on Hunter's Fury or Scorpio with its stacking of bullets, I could just swap to the foam launcher to proc Galvanize more immediately. This does mean that I'm able to actually start the fight with stacks, and after I've got a few kills, disorient, or a few stacks on the old Scorpio, the moment Galvanize does end out or I take too much damage, I'm able to pretty much reproc it near enough immediately. Perfect Galvanize is going to be an interesting addition to a lot of builds, simply just because it allows you to be a support DPS player, or a supporty tanky player, or a supporty healing player, supporty CC player. It just allows you to do quite a lot more. It's not going to be changing the meta or the best in slot, and of course running a dedicated support, dedicated healer, dedicated CC is going to be a much more viable option. For now, it's just a fun thing to have. Have fun, good luck, don't die. It's bad for the health.